But good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Scott. I'm a psychologist, author, a former adjunct professor of psychology for 23 years. And more importantly, the purpose in my life, I believe, is to help people bridge the gap between science and spirituality. So today I'm going to discuss angels, there's a lot of symbols out there, and I'm not going to talk about just the cute symbols or images around the holidays, but talk about them as living beings that we can have a robust relationship with, and then how you can start to connect with them in your life if you'd like. So, first of all, my journey began when I was an early teenager. A lot of people say, like, how'd you get your interest in spirituality? And I always say, I came in hot in this life. I was just interested as a young child. Even though I didn't like to go to church, we were raised in a Lutheran church. What the thing about the church that I liked, even in like fifth grade, fourth grade, I liked the sermons, learning about, whatever the topic the pastor was talking about. So in the Lutheran church, if you may not know, during the seventh and eighth grade, we all had to go to confirmation classes. And my older brother gave me a heads up and told me that in the second year, in the eighth grade, we had to take sermon notes and then hand them in to the pastor each week. But I was so fascinated by the sermons, started taking notes the first year, and I kept them. I wasn't a good student, but for some reason, I just wanted to keep the sermon notes. So then the second year started, we handed in to the sermon notes as, anticipated. And I didn't even look at my notes from the year before. But after a few weeks into that year, I noticed that one of the sermons was repeated from the year before. And then it kind of shocked me, like, I don't know, maybe it was just an ad hoc thing. But then a few weeks later, the pastor repeated another sermon. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I was like, well, maybe God told him that we didn't get it the first time he taught that sermon, or maybe we just weren't, learning as fast as we could. And I wanted to ask the pastor, but I was so reluctant to do that. I was just a kid, and he was a larger than life, figure to me. The robes and all that, the more formal attire in the Lutheran church. So one day I finally kind of caught him, like there wasn't any people around after the service. And I asked him, I said, Pastor, what do I noticed that you're repeating two or three sermons, from last year. And I just wondered why, like, what is the reason? It was just bothering me. And so he put his hand on my shoulder, stern face, and said, Scott, this is a tough job. And so for me, it just cracked, my world just cracked open. I was like, he was all my lifelines to God, like he was a teacher. He was, this, like I said, larger than life figure. And so it just caused me, and he was a wonderful person. I didn't hold it against him, but it got me thinking that I gotta look for answers on my own and in different ways. So after that, and so that was in eighth grade. So after that, I began, I was doing all my kid stuff, but still, passionate about, finding out about God, about how to make connections, and how God interacted with us physical beings. So I started looking into other religions. I studied meditation for years. And then, as Eric said, I went to school to study the psychology of spirituality, metaphysical sciences, all to understand how God interacted with us. And then probably, well, a few years ago. So I was doing that for about 20 plus years. And then a few years ago, I had the idea to write a book about angels. And I was looking for a co-author. So I've been listening to some podcasts, and this one podcast, A Psychic Story, top-rated podcast, and was led by Nicole Bigley, who was a psychic intuitive. And I sent her an email, just to, mapped out. I'm writing a book. I'd like to do a book about looking for angels, and I would like a co-author to handle the intuitive metaphysical side. And I figured, well, it's a highly rated podcast. I'll never hear back. So the day after that, I sent the email. I got a message back from her saying that we needed to talk, and we scheduled a call. So I didn't know what to expect there, but Nicole introduced herself, and she's a practitioner. She works with angels on a regular basis. She has clients that she meets with on a regular basis. And so she told me that she was preparing for a session one time, and her angels said to her that she needed to write a book about them, to tell people about us. And being the person she is, she said she'd be happy to, but she has a full plate. She had a full-time job. She was running the podcast. She was doing the sessions. And she said, I'll do that, but I need help from someone who's a writer and knows the publishing industry. And that is when my email hit her inbox. The timing was unbelievable. So off we went, and we developed a book, Looking for Angels, a guide to understanding and then communicating with angels. So that took about a year and a half to develop. And during that time, I really not only spoke with Nicole, but other people who are into, some people say the woo-woo side of things, the somewhat non-scientific things, as far as the non-physical world. And what I learned was that there are several different kinds of angels and levels of angels. I did a review of how angels are depicted in the four biggest religions on the planet, the Judeo-Christian, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. And then I also found out and looked into stories of how angels interacted with people. And it goes back thousands of years. When you certainly look in the sacred texts, you have angels in the Old and New Testament, in the Christian and Hebrew Bibles, and Islam, all mention incredible interactions with the angelic realm. And then certainly the thousands of personal stories in modern day where people are in rough times or even treacherous situations, and a person shows up, helps them, they go looking back to try and thank them, and they can't find anyone. So I kind of looked into those things, and then psychologically, because of my background, I'm like, okay, let's see what people think about that. Then you have the naysayers that the minute they see angel and non-physical, they're like, nope, doesn't exist. But actually the bulk of, I'd say the bulk of clinicians who are patient-centered kind of go along the idea that if a person has interacting with or sees a vision and says they see an angel, or many children have experiences with the invisible friend that may or may not be real. That if it's a positive experience, we can believe that it's real for them and support their connection. It's only when things go awry and things look dark, or obviously, produce bad things or bad feelings in someone's life, do you really have to dig into that. So on the psychological end, there wasn't much to do as far as proving anything, because we can't, verify anything that someone says they experience. But the idea to go along with it and support people as long as it's a positive thing. And then scientifically, since we're in an age of it's called scientific materialism, all born from Newtonian physics, where everything that has to be observed or measured in order to be real. That's what scientific materialism is. That things have to be observed and measured in order to be real. And so, obviously the non-physical world falls outside of that. However, quantum physics is starting to crack the door to some degree, from the materialistic Newtonian physics, because, electrons and photons are more alike than they are different. There's the whole wave particle existence of things that of electrons that, once you observe them, they go from a wave to a particle, and our observation of the world changes. I know I'm kind of brushing over, a large part of this, but in general, I think quantum physics with quantum entanglement, people, electrons impacting other electrons at a distance at the same time, again, moving from wave to particle and they're incorporating them now into quantum computers. So it's starting to blur the line a little bit between material and non-material, or physical and non-physical concepts. And so the idea of angels in the unseen world, I think, is starting to blur a little bit. So in working with, let me just check the time here. Working with Nicole in the psychics and angel communicators, the things that I've learned is that the big thing is to start to quiet our minds. I mean, we go about this world with so many inputs, TV, radio, podcasts, Zoom meetings, but things that will distract us from keeping our minds and keep our minds active, so that we don't look at the subtext. We don't look at the quiet times. To take a quiet walk in the park and outside. And I know many of you in North Carolina, you're probably more closer to the outdoor experience and the quietness of nature than up here in New Jersey. But in general, our experience is to be active rather than quiet. And the quietness is where we can start seeing and hearing things beyond our physical worlds. So the second thing I learned is to set my intentions. Like, people would say, just ask to see more angels in your life, and ask for a robust connection with your angels or your past loved ones, or even your extraterrestrials, which I've done in the last year or so. So that's the big thing, is to say, quiet your mind, ask, and expect things. So when people say, okay, how do I start? How I first see experiences, and how do I start experiencing the unseen world, angelic world? First of all, I tell them that, yeah, think about your dreams. Don't dismiss a dream, especially if it has like some sort of, it's like it's unlike any other dream. If it's a special dream that impacts you, that could be the spirit world trying to get a message through. And then flickering lights, meeting someone at the right time, hearing a song that directly answers a burning question. These synchronicities are kind of breadcrumbs to get you looking and listening to other people and what's the spiritual world. And then the second is slowing down, and then asking. And then third, you expect to see results. Connection isn't just about, one or two things happening. It's a lifelong practice. So my suggestion for connection with angels is to slow down, ask, and expect results, and you'll be surprised at what shows up. So thank you for sharing this time with me. I hope your journey will continue, and you'll have courage and compassion, and know that you're surrounded all the time by a spiritual host.